I'm Mr. Rosansky, and this is a speed run of Practice Test 5, the second module, the B module, the easy one. But even though it's easy, let's initiate our strats by heading to the first conventions question and beating it up. I am going to look for my omega considerations, which I love so much. And I see that these are verbs. I've got a both, I've got a singular, I've got a neither, and I've got a plural. I've got nothing that really stands out here, so I'm going to start looking for the context. I see that we are sentence initial, which is going to absolutely massacre these two verbs that tell me when. I shift this through a different lens. I do realize in this position that these are both actually participles, so I will navigate my both to a neither, which doesn't often happen, and then I'm going to consider A and C. I know that the saloon was created by the businessman, which means I want the reduced passive past participle offered there. The next conventions question, I've got pronouns popping, so let's consider number. I've got a plural, I've got a plural, I've got a singular, and I've got a plural. I can bias the odd man out for this one and go looking for a reason to pick something. The first time is a clue that can help me, that this is a this, and the general concept, making it the first time, is what I like most. This concept makes this the first time a nation would support. My next conventions question, I'm going to check for omega considerations, but, well, nothing pops. As I go looking for consistency, I don't see anything in the surrounding text to support this, nothing to kill for equivalence, and now I'm left on the final four, which means I'm going to consider this semicolon first, just because I know that he needs a complete sentence on either side. I certainly don't have a complete sentence on the left of this semicolon because popularized is a verb that needs a direct object. The recognition of that kills both of these. Then it's one of these two guys. We be chilling on the no pause, kind of for a similar reason that A and D fall. A comma doesn't need a complete sentence to the left. However, that there's no comma to the right, meaning there's no bridge, it applies to the same kind of reason for why D is wrong. But I don't think you need to know any of those things. Your vibes would take you there, and that's a beautiful thing. I've got another convention question. This one is the omega consideration mood. Am I asking a question or am I making a statement? Researchers investigated how people perceive acts of kindness. This seems to be making a statement, and then it goes into what they found. I'm going to check my omega considerations for this question after I pop one little zoomerino out. This omega consideration is going to be misplaced modifier because I see things shifting all around within these items. I go to the start of the sentence, one of the few African American global explorers, so I want a person. A is going to be our answer. This is saying that Henson is one of the explorers, which is true. This is saying that the years are an explorer. This is saying that Greenland is an explorer, and this is saying that several treks are an explorer. None of that really makes any sense to me, and I hope it doesn't for you. I continue to go looking for my omega conventions, and this one, though it's going to be a little bit stubborn and not want to pop up, is going, please, can you cooperate? Conventions? Whew, technical difficulties on their end, not even my fault. I've got verb, I've got a singular, I've got a singular again, and then I've got a singular, and then I've got a plural. I can bias the odd man out and go looking for a subject. This subject is going to be the first, we're going to find the relative pronoun, and that's the subject. Then I ask myself, what is the that? Who or what is the that referring to? And then it's nematodes. And if I wanted to know if nematodes were singular or plural, I could look around and hope it's mentioned elsewhere, which it is mentioned here, and that it's constructed in this parallel structure, the concept of parallel structure, known as worms, plural, nematodes, plural, that must be plural. Moving on, we're out of the omega consider or the conventions questions, and we're on to these logical transitions. Then I'm going to consider what I've got. They propose that scientists avoid using the term life. Researchers should use another word. I guess I should have made a different vowel sound for this life. I don't have sequence. This is a weird one. I don't have sequence. Maybe there's no location, so it's some sort of contrast. This is the contrast that demands a concession, and there's not there. This is just an eternal alternative option, and I'm going to pick that one. I've got another logical transition question, so I'm going to go looking to the sentence slowly. To guarantee the validity of experimental results, scientists rely on precise, unchanging standards of units of measurements. They developed the international system of units. I like a so right here. Nothing's in contrast because it seems to be something that they like. Regardless, certainly no concession. In addition, I don't know what new thing that I've added to what overarching thing. So for this reason, seems to fit my initial schema, my suspicions of a so. My interest in old libraries had led me to seek them out. Whenever I visit a new part of the United States, blank, I could visit every state in the US and still not find the oldest public library in the Western Hemisphere. As a result, maybe, nevertheless, maybe, earlier sequence falls. In other words, I'm not restating the previous idea because she seemed to admit defeat. Then I consider because my interest has led me to seek them out, I can fail. No, despite the fact that she wants to seek them out or always seeks them out, she could never reach that goal. Nevertheless, is going to be my choice. I would emphasize the math of serious A. So this one speaks about this thing can be described. This is like a way to measure mass. That's not it. This is again seeming to provide a definition for mass. That's not what I want. We've got the more massive, which is a great way to emphasize something. However, I do not think that we're emphasizing the right thing. Then, with a mass of 2.63, Sirius A is more massive than the sun. I love that. I just want to make sure that these things are true. Mass is popping here, and the rest has to be true. With a mass of this is more massive than the sun. Oh, geez, this definition helps me do that. I absolutely understand this definition now. I want to contrast first and second class levers. In levers, the load, these are defining parts of a lever. In first and second class levers are in different location. That seems to be fair so far. First class levers are simple machines consisting of, but then again, the same is true. Well, this seems to be presenting a similarity. In first-class levers, the fulcrum is located between the effort and the load, but in second-class levers, the load is located between the effort and the fulcrum. So I like this one more. I'm going to double-check to make sure that this is true. First-class levers, fulcrum is located between the effort and the load. First-class levers, the fulcrum is located between the effort and the load. And second-class levers, the load is located between the effort and the fulcrum. Second-class levers, the load is effort. I like this one. This is weird. It's almost like saying, I can't help but read this in both first class and second class levers. The fulcrum and the load are in different locations, as if there's like a third lever type. There's just so much ambiguity that's present in B that D seems to solidify. So I love that D is true. B is gross. If I were to push it a step farther, it's not merely that they're in different locations, because the different locations concept can lead us to choose combinations that aren't present. For example, in D, we are left with this nice little binary of like effort, fulcrum, load, or load, fulcrum, effort. And then in second class levers, we've got load is located between effort, load, fulcrum, ELF, FLE. Those are our options, but that they're in different locations, B allows for the definition of something crazy, which is that theoretically, if E's never in the center, we could have like the effort between the fulcrum and the load, and we could have the load on either side of the fulcrum. So B, wildly ambiguous. D is true, provides the contrast. Every way that I slice B is absolutely gross. Pick it and move on. I want a similarity between the glaciers and icebergs in Greenland. So these two things, I want a little bit of a similarity because they break off their melting rate. This seems to only present one. Greenland's glaciers are both melt during the year. Okay, what's the similarity? They both melt, contributing to rising sea levels. That seems pretty, I mean, it's a terrible thing, but it seems pretty fantastic for an option. Charlie Moon found that the melting rate, this is a difference, and glaciers on the coast of Greenland melt during the warm summer months. In the surrounding water, the temperature, no, this ain't it. So let's navigate to the first question. We've got a little narrative. Maybe we don't have strats that work, so we're just going to read. I'm going to have one of those gorgeous oranges, said Mrs. Wilkins, staying where she was and reaching across to a black pile. Rose, how can you resist them? She's reaching at things, so she's stretching forward. For question number 2, many ancient sculptures of head, or sorry, start in the center. This is because the nose is the most blank. This is going to kick me back a sentence. As I go back a sentence, I see that people's heads are missing their noses. So the missing of noses is because nose is the most blank of a sculpture on a person's head. I don't know how the missing would be because of recognizable. Fragile could work, but I'll look around. Delicate, absolutely. Is it going to be fragile? Looking in the surrounding text, I've got so well preserved that the team has been able to blank detailed information, occupy, hoard. Well preserved, I don't have anything to engage with hoard. They are able to obtain. That's just the word that fits this definition. It's preserved so they can obtain information. Nothing else is really necessary. As I read this one, I've got nothing managing. I've got nothing in here, so I have to keep reading. Since action taken on one side affects the other, and that's going to be the context clues there. But then I land on this participle at the very end. making cooperation essential. Then I can plug this back into my original statement along the US-Mexico border. Requires. Wow, the word's just right there. Gifted to me. Though not closely related is going to be my first signal element leading me to, though not closely related, they share basic something, including projective spines. This little dashy poo is going to define something to the left side, traits the two groups of mammals independently developed in their equivalent roles. So, though not closely related, the hedgehog tenrecs of Madagascar share basic similarities, seems to be true. Concerns about would be funny, but I don't think they even know the other exists unless they fight over land. Let's engage with this main purpose by doing some reading and summarizing. I'm just going to grab the first, what feels like significant chunk here and yap about it. A song may be small, but it is fun to sing. I'm reading the next section, which I'm just going to consider to be this. In hours of toil, when sad, toiling trouble. When sad, it peps me up, and when at eve I long for rest. At night I be sleepy, I think, is what that's going for. Then this seems to be comma, this seems to be some like final idea, and so I'll summarize that all at once. When cows come home along the bars, and in the folder here, when night and bells ring, as night the shepherd herds his stars, as night be doing its night thing, I sing, and life is good. All right. I feel basically, I didn't really understand this part. At eve, I long for rest. It seems slightly negative, but we're going to read it. To convey how engaging in song, yeah, that feels exactly what we're talking about. To compare the speaker to the singing shepherd, no, night was compared. To portray the speaker's excitement about farming, no, we seem to care about singing, and farming is just like a background activity. To describe the pieces of music, genres the speaker enjoys hearing, no. Bell isn't a genre. Song as a category isn't a genre. A is it. Ooh, I wanted to make sure I was selecting them. We want a main purpose of the text. Let's read the last sentence. We've got a juicy little thus. It ain't surprising that this city became so rich in SL journalism. All right, so we can't forget this thus. It's not surprising that this city became so rich. Then I'll start reading 18. Ooh, 18. I sniped that with my middle finger from the top row. 1800 SL newspapers flourished across Tejas, Texas, San Antonio. San Antonio had 11. El Paso, but, signal on, but El Paso surpassed, was greater. This city had twice as many. Oh, and then we just El Paso. El Paso is located on the border. El Paso is close to Mexico and has a ton of speakers. Given all of this, given the previous sentence, there's a ton of focus on El Paso here. I think the main purpose is to exceptionalize El Paso. To compare Spanish language newspapers published in Texas with the ones today, I don't remember anything about that. To explain that Spanish language newspapers thrived in Texas and especially in the 1800s. We are in the 1800s. 7B is looking pretty. To argue that Spanish language newspapers published in El Paso, so far true, influenced the ones published in San Antonio. San Antonio detail was up here. Then it moved on from that. It said it was bigger. I have no evidence to support that. This statement, rich site for Spanish language journalism, but to take this and create like another thus in my mind and advance the text to say this, I don't have the textual support to build this comparison. To explain why Spanish language newspapers published in Texas were popular, to explain why Spanish language newspapers published in Texas were so popular in Mexico, unless I misread everything, they're just close to Mexico. Yeah, that's not engaging for what I'm talking about. How would text 2 respond to text 1? So let's give a little readerino for text 2 first to calibrate ourselves. Text 2 offers what? We should zoom out in a second. The show is outdated. True. But keep it. It is iconic and gives money for some. Though they're granting this, though it is a little behind, it can be updated. For example, Someone did it with other styles, and that performance became popular. So this is a substantial underlined portion. So I'm going to see if I can fight my fight just on that underlined portion. I'll zoom one, pop out. But the show, I'm going to make sure the show is the Nutcracker. The show is stuck in the past with an old-fashioned story and references, so it should no longer be produced. Immediately, this person would say, no, 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 no. Don't no longer produce it. Just give it a little update arena, right? Throw in some hip hop, and then everybody's gonna love it. Let's go. By questioning the idea that the story of the Nutcracker is stuck in the past, no, they would just grant that immediately. By agreeing that contemporary audiences have largely stopped going to see the performance, no, it should be kept because it's a holiday favorite, they said, right up here. It was a holiday favorite. It was iconic. By pointing out that most dance companies could increase their incomes by offering modernized versions. They do kind of suggest the updated, modernized, by pointing out that most dance companies could increase their incomes. It says provides substantial incomes for some, but that's not the argument. It can be behind the times and has been gaining popularity. This is a little spicy, but we'll leave it and move on. By suggesting that dance companies should consider offering revised versions of Nutcracker instead of completely rejecting the show. I like this. The revised version that's exemplified down here, they're not going to go as far to say that most dance companies could make more money. They're kind of just saying the ones that do, update it. Maybe we get some more dollary dues. And that's a wonderful thing. Moving on, graph to complete the text. Let's zoom out once. Recreation visits by month to 4 U.S. national parks during the peak seasons in 2021. A student notes that among parks shown in the graph, the park with the highest monthly recreation visits in all 3 months, the park with the highest monthly number of recreation visits is Triangle, no mix-ups there, Yellowstone, Yellowstone, absolutely, easy peasy. We want to use data from the table to complete the assertion. Average clothing prices across this year. Consulting the table, she finds that this was the case. I need to know what this is, so I'll pop back one. Which the average sale price was of an article of clothing was lower in 2019 than 2022. So I can juggle these two columns. We want to find the average sale price being lower in 2019 than 2022. 44, that's lower. Button-down shirts seem to be an attractive start. That's higher, higher, higher. So button-down shorts, consulting the table, she finds that this was the case for these things. Button-down shirts, absolutely. Which finding from the same would most support their conclusion? What's the conclusion? Nice. It's at the end. So let's grab this sucker. I'm going to have to zoom out. See, carbon dioxide does not additionally cue midges, frog biting midges. All right. There's no clue. We want to support this. So we want evidence of CO2 not doing anything. That's it. No impact. I don't know what else I might be missing. So let's start engaging with the items. Only a small number of midges were found in the traps, though the majority were found in a trap that played calls and released CO2. We want to make the statement that CO2 isn't doing anything. A, false. Midges entered the trap that released carbon dioxide and played calls only during or immediately after. This shows that, so we're not refuting, we're supporting. That false too, because that seems to show that it's doing an extra thing. More midges were found in the trap that only played calls than more midges were found in the trap that only played calls. This is showing that there was not an effect of carbon dioxide. C seems to be pretty. The trap that released carbon dioxide and played calls, so attracted few midges when the carbon dioxide were low, but increasing it made it. I just want to make sure this cue concept is spot on, where like cues, an additional cue means they would also need it to find something. Wondered if calls alone are sufficient for them to locate frogs, or if midges use carbon as an additional cue. Yeah, everything was fine. C is the right answer. Pick it and move on. We want to start the biologist. The biologist's claim. What's the claim? That the program has been reasonably successful. Although the California condor is a rare species, that the program must be successful, we'll try to engage California condor population, number of condors. We're going to see if we can just fight off some liars before we start engaging with whatever's before this, talking about the program. The number of captive California condors decreased between steadily decreased. Captive, steadily decreased. It decreased, but then it goes up, right? This is definitely closer than this. Liar. The number of California condors living both in captivity and in the wild decreased only slightly. That's true. The difference between the number of captive and wild California condors remains relatively steady. No. Between 2004, no. No, this is a huge change. Between these, that's a huge change, and they're moving apart. I would say that C is a liar. The number of wild California condors increased overall. The number of wild increased overall. Yes, started here, ends here. Good. It's not saying that it's constantly increasing. It's just saying increase overall and exceeded the number of those living in captivity. So what's the program? The program captured 27 wild condors in order to protect and breed them. Captive birds have been reintroduced. So we're taking 27, we're breeding them in captivity, and then we're releasing them. So that they both went down is like an L on that. That they increased overall shows a success, and that they were more than living in captivity shows that their plans for reintroduction are absolutely successful. I love it. 3 more. We want to use data from the table to complete the example. What's the example? What's the example? But that trend wasn't universal. We want to then read all of this. A student writing a report about tourism in several Asian countries notes that among the countries in the table, the most had annual increases in tourism, except. Most had increases, except. Now, there are so many different numbers on this one where I'm comparing not just two, but, or I guess in 2718, I'm going to just go for liars on this one. In each year shown, the revenue from tourism by residents of those countries was greater than the revenue from in each year shown, the revenue from tourism by residents, annual spending by international tourists, only international tourists, revenue from tourism by residents, this can't be it. 13 can't, it can't be A. Japan's international tour revenue was higher in 2016 than it was in 2018. That's not true. South Korea's annual international tourism revenue decreased from 2016 to 2017. Oh, wait, South Korea decreased. True. In each year shown, Thailand had higher international tourism income than any other. So that's true. So it's C or D. What's my claim again? A student writing a report about tourism in several Asian countries notes that among the countries in the table, most had annual increases in tourism. Oh, in 17 and 18, when it's saying this, an increase in tourism in 2017 means that we're grabbing 2016 and moving on to 2017. So this one is gorgeous. C's the right answer. That it's the highest of all of them doesn't show the trend being not universal. It's showing like an exceptional increase. So a little weird with that recognition that we're kind of backshifting one for the dates, but absolutely. We want a quotation from a researcher to support the student's assertion. Asserts that their escape, now maybe the there is used in a singular their way and they broke out of a fish farm, but I highly doubt that. So the escape from the farm into the wild will big negatively impact ecological effects. All right, let's start going for it. In one site in the wild where fish were observed, is the there that concept? I'm just going to, yes. So we're dealing with this concept of fish. Okay. In one site in the wild, these fish were observed. Females outnumbered males, while in another, the number of, there's an equivalent, maybe. I don't know really what this means in relation to this. Though some presence of the fish in the wild has been recorded, there are insufficient studies of the impact. No, we want to say that there's significant long-term. This would weaken it, or this wouldn't even weaken it. We just don't have the evidence yet. The ecosystems into which, so fancy. the fish are known to have been introduced may represent a subset of the ecosystem into which the ecosystems are known to have been a subset of. This isn't making any statement about long-term negativity. Through interbreeding, the fish might introduce the trait of fluorescence into wild fish population, making those this is going to be it. I don't know the male or female why that would be negative, but this just screams to me a huge negativity about vulnerability to predators. We could double check to see if this fluorescence concept is there, and it's absolutely something that they can do. D is the right answer. Pick it to move on. We are on our final question to logically complete the text. Let's go grabbing what we've got. I see these is immediately going to kick me back one, so I can engage with these so far. Maybe I have to go back one more sentence, but the results show that forest plots that have undergone limited logging, the careful removal of control number 2, I can remember that, may be better than no logging. These in turn, so like in turn, critics, in turn, because of that, there's the suggestion. What suggestion logically follows? Logging may be useful for maintaining healthy forests, provided it is limited. The results show that limited logging may be better than no logging. Yeah, the results show. I like that. Let's keep reading though. Other forest management strategies are more affected than limited logging. No, we have kind of a positive statement about this. As time passes, it will be difficult to know whether limited logging has any benefits. This so far might guide someone into thinking like the as time passes matches to so far, but there seems to be a notion of positivity right at the outset. Maybe more robust. The study suggests it's more robust. What are you talking about? The best way to support forest health may be to leave large forests entirely untouched. No, that's the opposite of it. There is some limited logging is better than doing nothing. That's the answer. Easy peasy. Thanks for playing.